So welcome, everybody. I was hoping to hear a little bit from you. If you wanted to just type into the chat box, I'd like to know if you have applied to a federal job in the past, or if you're currently in that process, and what your experiences have been. You know, was it did you get any positive feedback? Did you get as far as an interview, or you tried it, you failed? Any experiences at all? I'd love to hear from you before I jump into my PowerPoint. So I'll give you a second to type in there. Okay, so it took so long to hear back. Yeah, it is a very slow process. They're trying to speed it up, but boy, it's tough. Applied many times, called for an interview only twice. Okay, first timer, been ranked qualified. Okay, but then it was canceled. Boy, you just can never tell. Got an interview and a job offer in 2016. Oh, that's good. Seems too intimidating with the crazy resume. Yep, I hear ya. Yeah, I did it a few years ago. I thought it was hard to get a job in the private sector. I know, it's its own animal, that's for sure. Lisa says it takes so long to hear back. And as a former Fed, I hate the lack of interaction with HR staff and hiring manager. Yeah, it's so blind. I mean, just like applying in private industry, it's a very blind process. Kalita says, I've applied dozens of times, made the cert, but haven't heard anything more. Okay. Kathy applied years ago and was selected as a candidate, but didn't get the position. Oh, well, that's promising at least. Christy says, from my wife applying in November of 2018, she didn't get a call back for an interview until May and was hired by the end of May. So yeah, the time frame can really vary. The Office of Personnel Management has pushed agencies over the years to try and make the process faster, but it just isn't. You know, legally, human resources and the federal government are required to read every submission. And when we see a time like this where the private industry job market is contracting, that means more people are going to apply to federal jobs. And so that could mean even 1,000 applications, if you can believe that. And they're legally required to read all of those resumes. There are no automated keyword search or automated resume review systems in the federal government. None at all. Human beings read all of the resumes, if you can believe that. There used to be an automated keyword search system in the late 90s, early 2000s, but they got rid of it because people were trying to game the system all the time by throwing a bunch of keywords into their resumes, and the resumes got really long. And anyway, they've abolished that. No, there are no, they have an automated tracking system, so you can see sort of where your application is in the process, but there's no keyword searches like you might find on a monster.com. Most Fortune 500 private industry companies, I think 90% use some sort of automated keyword search, but not federal. So they're reading all those resumes, and that's part of why it's such a lengthy process. So Abby, I'll respond to your comment in a second. Okay, so let me share my screen, and you guys can hopefully see my slides here. Okay, and I think if I go to slideshow, this will still work. Yep, okay. So hopefully you guys can see that now. So these slides come from our book, the Federal Resume Guidebook. And if you've ever heard my mom or I speak before, I'm sure we spoke with the same edition of the book. The Federal Resume Guidebook was the first book about writing a federal resume. It came out in about let's see, what year was that? It was a long time ago, late 90s, I guess, early 2000s. So we're in the 7th edition of the book now. It's very, very popular. It's one of the most popular books in libraries in America. You can find it on Amazon.com. And I really recommend the book because it's got all sorts of great samples and everything. Okay, so these are going to be 5 strategies, and I'm going to move really quickly because I'm only here until 11. So let's see how fast we can move here. Okay, so strategy 1 is writing an outline format resume. Several of you mentioned the format is strange, different than private industry. It's 3 to 5 pages. It has to match the job announcement. That's extremely important. It has to match the job announcement. So we do not write generic federal resumes at the resume place. If you come to us for a resume, we require that you know what job title or job series, they call it in government, what type of job you're going for so that we can target the resume. There are no generic resumes. It's going to include accomplishments, and it lists employment in reverse chronological order. It's a strict chronological resume. So no fancy stuff. It's just strict chronological. Not a private industry resume. Private industry resumes don't work. Bulleted resume, those are going to be too short, too hard to find the keywords. A big block, that's a classic. Those of you who are former feds, you'll recognize it. I'll show it to you in a second. And then functional or non-chronological. So functional resumes are really popular right now in private industry. They divide out like your types of experience. So you might put project management separate from your admin experience. That doesn't work in federal because the federal resume, you can think of it as a legal document. Those of you who remember the old days, there used to be a document called the SF-171, an old form you used to have to fill out. It doesn't have to have everything you've ever done. We only go back 15 years in a federal resume, but it does have to be anchored by time and date. So a lot of times on a private industry resume, you'll see page 1 with a lot of keywords and highlights and profiles and summaries. None of that works unless it's anchored by a time and date. It is a legal document still. Even though we call it a resume, it's really a legal document. So this is what it might look like. This is a format that we recommend. We developed it at the Resume Place, and now it's taught as the best practice. The Office of Personnel Management teaches this format of resume, which we call the outline format. Some of these items are required. So you see like the zip code and the full address. This is for legal reasons. You see the month and year worked, 11/15, 2015. These are all requirements. 40 hours per week, required to have hours per week. Salary is not required as of a few years ago. You don't have to have it on a federal resume, but we do recommend it in general. So we have paragraphs, you see here, paragraph. We put a top paragraph that describes the place that you're working. So Coastal Development Services is a major human resources organization. The company has approximately $1 billion in annual revenue. That's going to help increase the complexity of your job. So this person was called General Clerk 3. That was their job title. Nobody's heard of Coastal Development Services, right? So we describe what kind of a company it is. That's the first paragraph. And then the next paragraph, we have all cap headlines. So inside the builder resume, which we generally recommend building your resume on the website, they have a builder that they use. You can't have too many fancy formats. So that's how we started with the all caps. Now we use all caps even in our uploaded Microsoft Word resumes. Pay administration, problem solving, education and training administration. And then at the bottom, we have a little section called key accomplishments. And in the key accomplishments is actually a story that uses personal pronouns about something the person achieved. So this format right here is a best practice. And this is what's going to get you the best results. People always want to tell me other stuff they've done that worked or other stuff their friends have done that worked. And I won't argue with you. There are a lot of things that may work, but for us at the Resume Place where, you know, people are paying us to make sure that they become qualified or best qualified, we don't want to miss. So this is really middle of the road. You know, if there's a bell curve of normal, this is right in the middle. This is just the best practice right here. So let me show you a little bit more about how to do this yourself. Here's something you don't want to do, okay? This is the big block resume. Why do you think this format doesn't work? Any thoughts?
That
Too hard to read.
Hard to read.
Yeah, too hard to read, too long. Anybody else? It's miserable. You know, you look at it and your eyes cross. I always say this in my classes. If you don't want to read your resume, neither does anyone else. I know it's not rocket science, but see, these HR people, like I said, they might have hundreds of resumes to review. And if your resume looks like this, They're required to read it, but what they do, and this is what they tell us, is that they put these sort of hard to read resumes to the side, and they're like, oh, I'll come back to those. And then they might come back to it at the end, and they sort of zoom really fast with their eyes, but they're not going to read every word. They're just too busy. This is also a format we don't recommend. It's the laundry list. And any ideas why the laundry list might not be effective? Theories? And you're welcome to unmute. Why do you think this format is less effective than others?
It doesn't tell how they did what they did.
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't say anything about how they did what they did. This is basically like a position description broken up into bullets, right? Anybody else?
It just kind of feels stuffy and not kind of robotic, like not really put much thought into it, like a generic
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. Yeah, it's just really plain and robotic. And the thing that is missing that I think you're speaking to is any kind of analysis. So it doesn't really highlight what's more important than anything else, right? Everything looks equal in this list. And so if you're an HR person and you're required to find certain words and phrases in this resume, which they are, they don't know which of these bullets is more important than any other. So let's look at the after. So this is an after resume, same person. And you'll see all the compliance details up there at the top, the address and everything of where she worked. And then all cap keywords and little paragraphs. And then here we have the accomplishments just indented underneath some of these skills. So this style is really effective because as an HR person, they get to hone in really quickly on the most important words. Now, I told you there are no automated keyword search systems. However, because HR is so busy and really overburdened these days, we believe that HR scans as opposed to reads every word. Actually, most people scan now. They don't really read every word because of the internet and our phones and everything. So when they're scanning with their eyes through your resume, the all caps at the head of these paragraphs can help them just stop really quickly and see that you're qualified. And I'm going to show you how to find these words that are the most important in the announcement.
Emily, I think it's
So just to, yeah, go ahead.
No, I think it's true to when you said the after, I tried to type it in before, but to list like quantitatively how you've contributed to a company, like in numbers, because that'll stick out as opposed to the same old question. Like, you know, streamline process by 30%, save company, like stuff like that.
Oh yeah, the HR folks who review these are very sensitive to like keyword soup and people who seem to be fluffing and not putting facts in. So anything you can add that's an actual fact, like how many, how much, is going to really exactly have a big impact because they're like, oh, that seems true. That seems real.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who put words in their resume and you can't really tell if it's real or not. So yeah, anytime you can put a fact in there, that's going to help. So just to remind you about the compliance part, you have to have month and year of each job you held for the last 10 years, your supervisor name and phone number, or HR if that supervisor isn't there anymore, street addresses, city, state, and zip code of employers for at least 10 years. Education with hours completed. If education is required, it'll say so in the announcement. With majors, colleges, with city, state, and zip code, okay, if it's required. Federal government, very few jobs require any sort of education. Most jobs in the federal government have no education requirement, but if it does say it, it'll say it in the announcement. Training, if that's required, you know, if you have to have a certain certification, you have to have the titles, the classroom hours, that sort of level of detail. And if you use USAJOBS Resume Builder to build your resume, to write the resume, it'll prompt you to do these things. And that's why I always really recommend it if you're a first-time applicant.
Emily,
okay, so strategy 2.
Emily,
go ahead.
Before you move on,
Yes?
on that last slide, we talking about putting your supervisor's name. What if, you know, you did have an immediate supervisor, but you really didn't work with them very closely? So should you not use their name and put the person that you worked with very closely?
Yeah, that would be fine. I mean, it's just for verification purposes. That would be
Okay.
fine.
Okay, thank you.
And
Sure.
and Emily, what if you were self-employed as a contractor? So you technically didn't have like a boss. You're the boss, but you're doing work for, you know, for the client technically.
Anybody who could verify what you did would be fine. When you're self-employed, just a colleague. Did you have anybody who worked with you?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, you could put that in there. That's
Okay.
fine.
Thank you.
So the way that we create this format is called the outline format. We use hats. So you have to imagine in this job right here where I'm talking to you, I'm a curriculum developer, I'm a career coach, I'm an expert on federal human resources, laws and regulations, and I'm often a team member. I do all those things in this job. And that's how you start to break down the job that you have. So you want to go to your most recent or most relevant job and ask yourself, what are the hats that you're wearing in that job? Admin, supervision, accounting, policy analysis, writing, whatever it is, you start to break it down like that. So here's some examples. This is a maintenance mechanic, and it's really interesting for these types of jobs. You know, there's just no maintenance mechanic on earth who would describe his job this way, but here are the hats. Maintenance mechanic, preventative maintenance, communications and teamwork, safety and sanitation, equipment skills, small tools, and problem solving. Those are all the things that a maintenance mechanic is doing at Shenandoah National Park. You know, it's a lot of talking and teamwork, using specific equipment, that's those job-specific skills, small tools, solving a lot of problems. Unique problems arise all the time when stuff breaks. Here's a human resources specialist. They're doing employee relations, they're a senior advisor, they have knowledge of employment law, case management, representation, so representing their organization to others, being a negotiator, negotiating on salary and benefits and all sorts of stuff. So those are some hats for HR. Here's some hats from a federal position, family program specialist. 0301 is the series. They might be called a family program manager, operations manager, supervisor. They're doing studies or analysis for improvement. They have administrative processes. So we just lumped all that admin work in there. Communications, customer relations, and computer skills. So we're just kind of breaking down each job into its component parts to start to create that outline format. And this is going to help us avoid either a big block or a laundry list, because now we're starting to analyze our job into its component parts in order to organize the description of our position. Hats build the outline format. So you see here, this is what the maintenance mechanic would do. So when I work one-on-one with a client, I ask them what hats they wear. I know about many jobs, so I can guess certain hats. And I'll just send them the list of hats, and I'll say, okay, write 2 lines about each of these hats. Give me two sentences about each of these. I want to hear more about the tools, the equipment. So that would be like a typical homework assignment I would give a client. It's a way to write that doesn't require you to overthink it, right? We start with a basic outline, and then we fill in the outline. So this is really, really good for beginners. If you already have a resume, I would say maybe put it to the side. Try and start fresh with this style or format. Our goal ultimately will be to match these all cap keywords to the announcement. So we can drop things that aren't related. We're just going to drop them out. It's a kind of a modular approach to a resume, and it makes it easy to target different jobs because we can rearrange these paragraphs. We can change the all cap keywords. We can swap certain things out. So we start with the outline format based on our job, and then we find keywords and we start to swap out our words for those words. Our goal here is to make the job that you have sound like the job that you want. Okay, so if you apply to a job where you're going to be doing maintenance mechanic supervision, they don't want you to use the tools anymore. They don't want you to go out there and fix cars anymore. They want you to just supervise others. You're going to put teamwork at the top. You're going to put training there, ability to teach others about small tools, right? So you can kind of update it without totally revising the whole resume every time. And this is a strategy to avoid burnout. So many of you mentioned that. We know it's a huge challenge, and that's why we have these strategies to help applicants not burn out. Don't reinvent the wheel every time you resubmit your resume. I said it has to match the announcement, but you don't have to rewrite every word. Just rewrite the all cap keywords, okay? So let me show you where to find these words. The keywords are in the vacancy announcements. Where do we find them? There's 3 places. You can look at the qualifications section, specifically the part that describes specialized experience. That is the red line for federal human resources. They are specifically legally required to find the specialized experience. It's inside the announcement, but they don't do anything cool with it, like highlight it, put it in bold. They need to have big arrows pointing to it. They don't. You have to find it in the announcement. How you will be evaluated is another really important part of the job announcement. It has knowledge, skills, and abilities listed there that have to be reflected in your resume. And then there's also these self-assessment questionnaires, which I'm sure you've seen. And the questionnaires are going to have words that are also super important in them to put in the resume. So hopefully you understand now, this is not a creative writing exercise. This is a technical writing exercise. You know, you do not have to be a great writer to write a federal resume. You just have to know where to find the words. Somebody in one of my classes years ago, a whole class full of engineers, he finally says, Emily, I get it. It's word engineering. Yes, we're engineering these resumes. Don't make up words. Don't make up words. Use the words that they use in the vacancy announcements. That's really key. So what makes a keyword? This process of understanding what words are more key than others, it requires analysis. You have to read a lot of announcements. After you read several announcements in your field, you'll start to see the words that reappear and reappear. A keyword is going to be critically important to the job. It summarizes the job actions or identifies the scope of the job. It's going to summarize competencies that are needed for the job. And it often includes those knowledge, skills, and abilities. And this you will get better at over time. So you can see here, when we make an outline for a client, we would put these all cap keywords, and then anytime we see words related to that, we put them underneath, just as reminders to ourselves that when we start to write the real content of the resume, we're going to make sure we included those. So we collect words. We're sort of collecting words, and we're collecting them in what could be called skills buckets. So we had the hat, emergency management operations, develop emergency operation plans, communications, and data. So this is a supervisory firefighter. The supervisory firefighter is moving into what? Emergency management. Do you see here that there's nothing about firefighting? Leave out the words that aren't related. Just leave them out. A supervisory firefighter is qualified to be an emergency management operations director every day of the week. But if they submit a resume that talks all about fighting fires, they're not going to get the job, because HR is not an expert in what you do. HR is an expert in reading and evaluating skills based on what's written. They can't read into it. They can't make assumptions. You have to give it to them on a silver platter. So you know that your job 100% is emergency management operations, right? As a supervisory firefighter, you're doing that all the time, but you have to make it really clear to them. Communication, again, they're not necessarily going to know that communications is a huge part of your job. You have to really spell it out for them. Now, a firefighter is a job that we've all heard of, so it's a little easier, but you know, if you have a technical job, you can really assume that HR doesn't necessarily understand what it is, right? They're reading your resume to see if it matches the announcement. That's it. So anybody have a question you want to unmute on keywords?
But in this situation, so I don't, never mind. I see how small his title is there. So that's the sort of, that's that's another way you would just, rather than having it in caps, like in some, no caps.
So this is from the USAJOBS format. It just puts it like that in their builder. When you fill out the builder, it just looks like that. But your point is good. The all cap keywords allow you to sort of retitle yourself because the all cap keywords resonate stronger than the job title. So, you know, if your job, that's how we get people promotions, for example. So your job title might be program specialist, but you want to be program manager. Well, our first all cap keywords is going to be manage programs. So we're throwing those aspirational words into the all caps. It is a little bit of a trick there. Yeah. And it definitely downplays the job title. For us, job title is way, way, way beneath anything else in terms of importance. And that's true for HR as well. They can't read anything into the job titles. So you have to make those keywords really sing. Great question. Anybody else? Okay. So question for you guys. What do you think is the difference between an accomplishment and a duty?
So a duty is something like a function, something you do on a regular basis, and an accomplishment is essentially an outcome of a duty.
Good. Okay, so more outcome based. Anybody else?
I think an accomplishment is something you can give quantitative analysis to, vice a duty. Like a duty would be something you would include in your job description if you were writing one from an HR perspective. But the accomplishment could be a range of things that you could accomplish, and it might not even be in your job description.
Right, so it could be a special project, or it could be some measurable or quantifiable aspect of your duties. So if you're a barista at Starbucks, yeah, your duty might be making coffee, but you might make more coffee, right? Or faster. So you could kind of create a metric around what you're doing, 10% productivity, 1,000 customers a day. I think the focus on measurable is good. Anybody else?
It could be an accomplishment could be something that you create yourself. So let's say if you're doing the coffee thing and you mix two different flavors together and you make this new flavor and the company likes it, that's an accomplishment. So it's your duties, but you take it to another level. It's more creative on your end only, opposed to something told to be done.
That's right. So something self-directed and innovation and improvement of any sort. So a lot of people, will tell me in classes, and we have a lot of focus on accomplishments in our resume, and they'll say, I don't have any accomplishments. I just do my job. I hear that a lot. First off, I want to tell you, the people who are bad at their job love to take credit for your work. They are not humble. The people who are really bad at their jobs are not humble, okay? So you should not be humble if you're good at your job. Your modesty in the federal process is not going to serve you. This is not a time to be modest. So take credit. The other thing is that sometimes doing a job well is the accomplishment, because there are so many people who don't do that job well. Customer service in the IRS. Okay, customer service in general, right? Somebody picks up the phone when you call and they're kind to you. They're helpful. Yeah, that is everyone's duty. But do they do it? No, they don't. So sometimes really highlighting how you're doing your job very well is the accomplishment. And you have to think through to what would happen if you didn't. So you have to think through, if I wasn't here to innovate, to provide good customer service, what would happen? Well, we would lose our customers. We would start to get behind. Productivity would fall. So you sort of have to think about the what if sometimes to help spur your ideas about what you've achieved. We include accomplishments because they demonstrate skills and experience. So, you know, with this federal process, it's very legal, like I said. They really need proof that you've done what you say you can do. They add interest. They're not boring. You know, you're going to compete against so many people. This is a way to show who you are. They show your added value. So that innovation, productivity, efficiency, all those soft skills, they increase your score or rating. So in the legal process, there is a rating and ranking that goes on. Several of you mentioned you were found qualified. You quote, made the certificate. You have to be found most qualified in order for your resume to go from human resources to the actual hiring official. Only the best qualified candidates, the top third, sometimes top 10, they set that metric themselves, but only the top candidates make it to that hiring official. So you have to score higher. The way you score higher is by including accomplishments, because they show you doing your job and more complexity in your job than someone who's just copy and pasted their position description. So they're going to prove that you're most qualified. So it's really very essential in the federal hiring process that you have actual little stories of things that you've done. It's not optional. And we really want them to be complete stories. So here this person has said, received recognition for participating in implementation of cybersecurity awareness campaign. Very typical that we would see this in a private industry resume. It's just a short little blurb. We have the frowny face there. What does that mean, participating in? Did they take an online class? Did they, you know, pass out some papers? What did they do? We have no idea. So in asking our clients to tell us more, this is what we came up with. Senior leadership selected me to lead an organization-wide cybersecurity awareness campaign because of my expertise in the area. This had never been done before and came at a crucial time for the organization. I hand-selected a team of 5 subject matter experts and tasked each with developing different components of our strategy. Next, I coordinated with managers across the organization to define a rollout plan. Finally, with the strategy and rollout plan in place, I leveraged technology such as online training modules, webinars, and emails to increase cybersecurity awareness. Through my initiative and action, the organization launched its first ever cybersecurity awareness campaign, increasing global visibility into a mission critical topic. I received a written commendation from the Chief Information Officer. I mean, it's just light years different, isn't it? So tell me, what do we know from the longer story? What is this? What are these? This particular person? What are their job skills? What are they good at?
Delegation.
Team building and developing and coaching.
Organizing.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. What else?
Takes initiative.
Planning.
The network
Yeah.
in the in the organization that he can reach out to.
Mm-hmm.
Problem
Yep.
solving.
Problem
Delegation.
solving. Yep.
Being a subject matter expert, being aware of how to make a webinar or module.
That's
The
right.
types of software you can use to do that, like Kajabi or WebJam.
That's right. So this person actually has some very specific knowledge that comes across in this story. Yep.
And she solved a big problem.
Yeah. Yep. So you can see that just from one story, the hiring official can see a lot more about who you are. And HR can put you higher in the top of the pile because that's what they basically do. They rank each candidate from most qualified to least qualified. You're going to move higher to the top of the pile this way because you have so much very specific information here about the complexity of your job and about you using your knowledge and skills. Let me ask you one more question. Do you think people at this person's workplace like this person? Do you think they are well liked at work?
Yes.
Yes, because they seem to want to include what people think. They want feedback and their delegation of rolling out these other people to get involved.
Yep. They asked people's opinion, so that's great. They got feedback. Any other theories about why this person might be liked or disliked?
I think well respected.
The knowledge part, the knowledge component.
Yep. So somebody that can put their work into action, isn't just all talk, right? So it says they were selected, right? Senior leadership selected me, and I received a written commendation. So those are all good evidence of the person being liked. Likability is kind of the X factor in a federal resume, because in the federal government, I'm sure you've heard, it's on the front page of the Washington Post from time to time, very hard to fire people. When you hire somebody, you might be stuck with them for like 20, 30 years. you guys are going to be in that job together for like decades, potentially. So likability is something they're trying to read into your resume to find out, is this person somebody I can get along with? So having a story like this can demonstrate, yeah, people like me, people trust me, people work with me. There is a format that's recommended: CCAR, context, challenge, action, and results. The context says what was going on at the time. Like in this story, they mentioned it had never been done before. The challenge is what you were challenged to do. The action are the steps that you took, each step by step, and then the results are what happened as a result. And that's actually a required format in the interview as well, CCAR. If you go to our website, resumeplace.com, it's there at the bottom of the slides, you can find all sorts of information about CCAR, and we have tons of stories in the book as well, demonstrating how this can be done in a resume. So the last item is strategy 5, adding core competencies. And we already hit on this. You look back at your accomplishment story, that story shows us what we're good at, what skills and personal qualities we share. And so core competencies are the value that you add to any job. And that's what shows who you are. And it's really, really important. I mean, people downplay this, but like I said, they're really looking to determine what kind of a person you are. You can start to match the competencies of any job by reading into job announcements and even mission statements like ICE. Our mission is to protect America from cross-border crime and illegal immigration. This mission is executed through immigration enforcement, preventing terrorism, combating the illegal movement of people and goods. Okay, so if you read that, what sort of personal qualities and characteristics do you think they would be looking for in an applicant? What can you guess?
Somebody who's obviously patriotic.
Yeah, patriotic. What else? It's a lot about rules, right? So they definitely want you to be a rule follower, someone ethical, right? Preventing terrorism. So don't be a terrorist, that's for sure. Don't do illegal stuff, that's for sure. So it's very law and order. SSA, Social Security Administration, here's their mission statement. We are passionate about supporting our customers, delivering financial support, providing superior customer service, and ensuring the safety and security of your information, helping you secure today and tomorrow. So how about SSA? What do you think are some of the personal qualities they're looking for here?
Somebody that's financial savvy, that is providing superior customer support. A lot of people, when they call like the IRS or the Social Security Administration, some of them might be having one of the roughest days of their life, unfortunately. So you don't know what the other end of that call is going through. Obviously, the safety and security part is paramount because of just the logistics of it. Yep,
the customer support really comes through there. passionate about supporting our customers. What else?
Protection, safety, security.
Yeah, again, a lot of ethics. So I hear from both of you some empathy and ethics. So some real soft skills there that they're really looking for. And I think that's accurate to both of these agencies. You know, SSA has trouble with it, right? People burn out in these jobs, and sometimes you get somebody on the phone who's not as compassionate as they should be. So they really have changed their mission statement to try and focus on that. And you'll find their application as well is looking for evidence of the fact that you are a person who cares about customers. ICE, on the other hand, is really looking for evidence that you're a person who follows rules. So it's a good way to know, too, if you're new to federal, whether the agency is a good fit for you.
Yeah.
You know, keeping in mind that there's a lot of burnout. You guys all mentioned that. Don't apply to a job you don't want. Don't apply with an agency you don't want to work for. It's a waste of your time. If you don't think you're going to fit in the culture, just don't apply, because you're just going to burn out. Focus on the agencies you feel like you'll be a good fit with in terms of, you know, core values and core competencies.
Yeah. Keep in mind
Inside that.
Sorry.
Go
Emily.
ahead.
I said, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I said, keeping in mind that you're interviewing them as well.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. I mean, sometimes people go all the way through to the interview and realize I don't want to work here. And it's like, you put yourself through all this work for what, you know? You really have to be careful, because this process is very demanding. There are core competencies inside job announcements. IT specialists are required to speak to their attention to detail, their customer service ability, oral communications, and problem solving. That's written in every announcement. Why? Because they had their first generation of IT specialists who didn't have good customer service, who didn't have those oral communication skills, right? They were sort of head down IT specialists. And so now they're really focusing on that. So inside the how you'll be evaluated, they're gonna mention these core competencies. Just keep your eyes open for them so that you can, when you're starting to craft the accomplishment stories that you tell, you can pick accomplishment stories to tell which you think will resonate with that job. So if you know you're applying to an agency like SSA and you have experience helping somebody, you know, with a complex customer problem, that will be a perfect story to tell. Okay, so I want to exit now so that I have a couple minutes to answer your questions here. Anybody have any questions that they want to ask me?
Is it really hard to get a job with the federal government?
Is it really hard?
Yes.
I think it's very challenging, but I think it's worth it, because these jobs basically last a lifetime. So if you consider the return on investment, I think it's a bigger return on investment than private industry. You know, you have a structure with guaranteed raises, benefits, work-life balance. Now everybody's teleworking, so geez, I mean, can't get any better than that. You know, you can take time off in a way you can't in private industry. I think you have so many more rights as an employee. I do think it's worth the time to invest.
Okay, thank you. A really great presentation.
Good. Yeah, please, I hope you guys will, it's so fast. I hope you'll buy the book and just, or go to the library and check it out. Even a previous edition would be fine. If it's in most libraries. Anybody have any other questions?
Emily, I have a question. So you mentioned CCAR. In the past, they used to call it STAR, Situation, Task, Action. Has that changed? Has that evolved?
No, what you're talking about is fine. It's STAR works too. It's okay. Really just an arbitrary mechanism to make sure that there's some sort of format followed. STAR works good. SMART works as well. Somebody mentioned here SMART. That's fine.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Emily, do you have any privy into the process of how long it's taking now, since everybody is virtually working from home, vice what it was taking before, especially for the positions that are listed as COVID necessity or like direct hires?
That's a great question. For the COVID ones, I would imagine they're moving much faster. Fast for federal would be 45 days from posting a post closing to hiring. But 45 to 90 days is what they target. And certainly we hear of stories outside that, but I would imagine for an urgent job, it would be 45 to 90 days.
Emily, I had a question on basically a lot of these announcements come up and they have about a week sometimes to fill it or to put in your resume. So should I be basically looking at the types of jobs or the types of agencies and come up with the federal resume based on those types as opposed to a specific job announcement if there's such a short turnaround?
That's a great point. It's good to go and find an announcement similar to the one you might want. Save those, print them out so that when they do come up, if they have a short turnaround time, you're ready. So you can find just a kind of similar job announcement, even if it's in a state you don't want to live in, and use that as a guide.
Are there a lot of
Thank you.
opportunities in the federal government for job positions?
Yeah, federal government is still hiring like crazy. So there's thousands of jobs on USAJOBS.gov, especially in this area. The U.S. government is the biggest employer in America other than Walmart. And you can imagine the jobs pay better.
Emily, I've got a question real quick. How do you identify a position that you know they've already identified an internal candidate for, but they have to put it out there by law just to get a certain number of people so they can move forward with it? That's been my experience. I'm trying to avoid that trap because I remember having done this in the past. I spent an entire week putting together my resume for this job that I had like 11 out of the 10 qualifications for. And still didn't get it, was ghosted by HR after they were initially wonderful. You know, they were like so helpful. I could call them 5 times a day and there was no problem. And then I tried calling them for 2 weeks and they were just completely like gone. Sorry. Wanted to give you a context.
Yeah, unfortunately, people call that wired. A job is wired for somebody. There's no way to know that. And especially now, people used to say, oh, it's wired if it's only open for a short amount of time. But even now, that's not really true. The reason they keep these open windows short is because they're overwhelmed with how many applications they have to legally, as I mentioned, review. And they get hundreds and sometimes thousands of applications. So they keep those windows short on almost all job announcements now. I would just say there's no real way to tell if something's wired for somebody, but that we get calls at the Resume Place every day from somebody crying their eyes out who was wired for a job and didn't get it because they were lazy in the process. You know, all this stuff I just described to you, the keywords and everything, they didn't do it. And they just assumed they were going to get the job and they didn't. And they call us crying. Is there anything you can do? No, you didn't take it seriously. You know, you didn't do the work. And that happens all the time. So we always encourage people to apply, even if they think there's a shoo-in candidate, because believe me, those shoo-in candidates sometimes don't get the job.
Thank you.
Sure. So yes, many federal jobs are restricted to current feds, and there are veterans preference for some jobs. But not for jobs that require any kind of education. That's something to keep in mind. So if you guys want to, I have to leave, I'm so sorry, but if you guys want to ask any follow-up questions, I'm happy to talk to you. My email is here, emily@resumeplace.com. I want to thank you guys. I'm sorry that my time is limited today, but I'm glad I was able to take Kathryn's place. So good luck to you guys. Please email me if you had additional questions and I couldn't get to them, okay? Thanks, Jeffrey. Thanks, Craig.